As a country, there comes a time when you have to tell yourselves what are your economic policies working? Why are your economic policies not working? Why are they not as efficacious as they should be? And the Nigerian policymakers have been talking over the several years, that economic policies are not really as efficacious as they should be because of a number of factors. But we put on the table mainly is the issue of smuggling and dumping of goods that can be produced particularly into the country through our neighboring borders. And about 2.5 years ago, for instance, and I'll come back to the issue of the chicken. About 2.5 years ago, I held a meeting with the Kano State governor, the Kaduna State governor, as well as, separately, as well as some textile companies. It started with some of the few existing or textile companies that are still alive in Nigeria today. UNTL, Nekemtex, I think, and a few. There was a time in Nigeria when we had almost 180 textile mills operating in Lagos, in the eastern part of the country as well as the northern part of the country. These were the highest or largest employers of labor in Nigeria after the public sector. So really, taking away public sector, you can see that these are the largest employers of labor in Nigeria. The textile industry is today dead. Why did the textile industry go dead? Just like I was talking about speaking with the manufacturers. The big problem they said was that smuggling and dumping. When we called them 2.5 years ago, we asked them to tell us what were their problems, that we wanted to make sure that we get the textile industries back to life, because we see the textile industry as one major, one industry that can employ large mass of people. And let me give you an example. You have cotton farmers, if they grow cotton. In the 90s, 80s and 90s, we had almost about 1 million cotton farmers across Nigeria whose businesses died. From cotton, we had ginners that also went into comatose. We had yarn and spinning companies before we got to the textile. Along the chain, we lost close to almost about 2.5 million jobs in the 90s. And you can imagine what that would be in 2018 and 19 or 17, as the case may be. And I asked them, what were the problems? They raised 3 issues. 1, they said access to finance. 2, they said electricity electricity or infrastructure problems. And then 3, they said smuggling and dumping. And when I held that meeting, I said, you know what, gentlemen, we will try to make as much as, because we have a selfish interest to see how we can get industries back to life and create jobs, and also reduce the propensity for people to be looking for foreign exchange to import textiles into the country. We said we'll make access to finance easy for you. Rather you go through your banks or you go through BOI, Bank of Industries, that will make it easy for you to access finance. So they tick that as a good idea, and at very subsidized rate, single-digit interest rate. They were very happy. They said, okay, Governor, how will you do with electricity? And I was then engaging Kano and Kaduna State. In fact, that was what led to my engagement of Kano and Kaduna State government. And they said, look, they will set up hubs, for instance, in the areas where they know the textile mills were predominantly established, to make sure that they have 24/7 electricity. Of course, in Lagos area, along the Oshodi area, Oshodi Mile 2 area, you go to some areas around the Ekpe and all that, we have gas pipelines that have been laid. So access to gas for which they can run and generate power to run their factories was now, as far as I'm concerned, solved. The third issue was smuggling. And I said, you know, gentlemen, we'll see what we can do to solve the problem of smuggling and dumping of textile into Nigeria for a bit. Since we made access to finance possible, we're looking at possibility how to make electricity possible for you to run your factory. You should be ready to come back to business. Say, Governor, we will not touch your money. We will not touch any loan that is given to us unless you solve the problem of smuggling and dumping. That tells you that to solve the problem of industries dying, to resolve the problem of creation of jobs, we as policymakers and government do not have any option but to take very seriously the issues of smuggling and dumping. And I go back. You were talking about eggs, poultry, chicken. 2 weeks before border closure, I received a call from the Poultry Association of Nigeria. And they said that they were carrying thousands of crates of eggs in their warehouses that they could not sell. They were carrying thousands and many large quantities of processed chicken that they couldn't sell. And I was asking them why. They said because there was a lot of smuggling of poultry into the country. Poultry was being smuggled, right? Eggs were being smuggled. Tomatoes were being smuggled. Of course, we also say rice was being smuggled. All these people, they were not selling their own locally produced items. And they wanted us to intervene. They weren't calling us to intervene because they said, look, for instance, the Rice Millers Association, Rice Farmers Association will say, look, Governor, through your intervention and through the Anchor Borers program, we have accessed loans for us to produce paddy rice. Through your intervention program, we have accessed loans for us to mill rice and sell to Nigerians. And that the probability of you getting these monies paid to the banks was getting remote because of smuggling and dumping, and that we needed to do something. So, of course, we also made our own, sent our advice forward to the presidency, and it also happened to coincide with another meeting that I understand was being held at the presidency, where the conclusions were that the large influx of arms into the country that was contributing to the high incidence of crime in the country were also coming through smuggled ammunition and the rest of them. So that decision was taken to close the border. Nancy, 2 weeks after border closure, right? The same Poultry Farmers Association called to say, Governor, thank you very much. Because of this border closure, we have sold all our eggs. We have sold all our poultry products. Now we're even trying to expand our poultry, our farms. We're encouraging more people to go into maize production because we can now have feeds to produce our chicken as well as our eggs.
Now the question
rice farmers, hold on a minute. Rice farmers also said the same thing. Rice millers also said the same thing. Now what am I saying, Nancy? By the fact that these borders were closed, right? The rice farmers, they are back in business. The industries are back, right? By this sheer fact that it was closed, more people have been employed. So that's why I'm trying to say the benefit of border closure is there. And I'm not saying border closure should be there forever. And I've said so in one of my interviews, that before we open the borders again, there must be some concrete engagements. So now the question is this: has there been engagements before now? In 2003, I'm aware, government signed an MOU with the neighboring countries, particularly in this case, Niger and Republic of Benin. In 2013, another MOU was signed about how they will prevent the influx of smuggled and dumping of goods into Nigeria through their countries. It never worked. So what am I saying? We must put in place, before the border is closed, my own suggestion would be, if I'm in a committee handling this, we must put in place workable arrangements where once we say this is what must be done, this is what country A, country B must do, everybody must play their role. If that is not played, then you close the border again. That's it. That's my view.
Okay.
That's my view.
Okay, now you've enumerated the gains actually. More jobs being created, Nigerians perhaps have more access, they can do a lot more things now. Are we seeing that the supply we're having cannot meet the demand?
I agree with you.
Yes, that's why I couldn't get chicken.
Listen, what has happened? Yes, of course, as usual, cost puts inflation. We've seen as a result of that border closure, supply has dropped, demand has stripped supply, so prices go up. But what does that do? What that does is that it encourages more people to go into that business. And in any case, who are the beneficiaries of this price increase? They are Nigerians. Jobs have been created, the industries are back to life again.
But people will go into those businesses if they have money.
Yeah, but we're also
inflation
saying,
is eating our pockets.
No. First of all, we're saying we're going to make access to finance possible for you. We'll make it for you to raise money, you go into those businesses and you make money. And what do you prefer? If you say, I have told you, the benefit of the border closure is that it has created jobs, right? Industries are back. Yes, prices have gone up, the beneficiaries of the rise in prices are Nigerians and Nigerian industries. Would you rather prefer that the border is reopened, right? These goods come in, right? Supply goes up, people get unemployed, and these industries close again. As a Nigerian, I would love, yes, there's a momentary and temporary increase in price, right? Nigerians benefit, Nigerian industries benefit, they are back to life again. More and more people see it as an opportunity. They go into the business of poultry, they go into the business of tomatoes, rice, everything, and all these things. And what you find is that by more people going into it, supply goes up. When supply goes up, matches demand, or even outstrips demand, price will come down. That's what I'm trying to tell you, that it is a temporary phenomenon which I'm sure will phase out and the prices will drop again. And we've seen the prices dropping. For instance, rice, right? When it was immediately done, price of rice in some of these stores went up to as high as 22,000. Go today. You can read Business Day or today, said that prices have come down by 19 to 20%. And that's business being conservative. Some of them have come, the drop in price has gone to as high as almost about 25%.
Now the question is, in as much as you're even supporting local production as well as our consumption, even if you take a look at the price of rice, where it is, it's also still very expensive. How many people can afford a bag of rice for like 20,000 on average with a minimum wage of 18,000 to 30,000 naira, Governor?
By the fact that we are providing intervention funds to these farmers, right? What that does is that it brings down their cost of production. As it brings down their cost of production, right, they would easily be able to compete. We are also only saying that price will come down, but that we should patronize the local alternative. And let me give you an example. In 2013, Nigeria increased import duty for rice import for parboiled rice to 70%. The same year, or immediately after that, Republic of Benin reduced duty on parboiled rice from 35 to 7%. Indeed, Cameroon scrapped duty on parboiled rice. These two countries don't consume parboiled rice. All they eat is white rice. So so what therefore would be the reason a country decides to scrap duty on rice or reduce drastically duty on rice just because they want to dump it in your country and also undermine your economic policies? Those are the kind of things I'm saying we as policymakers should not allow to continue. We must stand and say, notwithstanding our brotherhood, our relationship, but that we cannot be putting in place policies that will help grow jobs, get our industries back to life. What you are doing is putting in place policies that will undermine the efficacy of our policies. We shouldn't allow that to happen. I'm sure you agree with me.
Governor, let's take a look at this other aspect. Even just like the president has said in different fora, let's produce what we eat and eat what we produce. But how much economical sense does it make? That can Nigeria really produce all we want or all we need?
Nancy,
for example, the United States, Governor, for example, yes,
I'm not trying
still imports a lot of things.
I have not told you that.
Can Nigeria, we do something we have more comparative advantage?
And I'm going to explain it, right? You cannot tell me that Nigeria cannot have comparative advantage in the production of maize. You cannot tell me that Nigeria cannot have comparative advantage in the production of rice to the extent we have to import it. You cannot tell me that Nigeria cannot have comparative advantage in the production of tomatoes to the extent we have to import it. You cannot tell me Nigeria cannot have comparative advantage in the production of, what are you saying, cassava. We import starch, we import ethanol into Nigeria. Listen, I agree with you. Nigeria cannot have comparative advantage in the production of aircraft, so import it. Nigeria cannot have comparative advantage in the production of heavy-duty vehicles, so import it. Indeed, there was a time in Nigeria in 1977 to mid-90s, Nigeria was producing Volkswagen, Pan. We know, yeah, they were not producing wholly. But then, at that time, I knew that the tires that Volkswagen and Pan were using were being produced by Dunlop and Michelin. I know that the windshield that were being used for the production of these vehicles were being produced by Toyo Glass, Oluwa Glass, and so on, and Pickington Glass in Aba. I know that some of the headlamps that these Volkswagen and Pan were using were being produced by Nigerian companies. Nancy, all of these companies are dead today just because we did not follow up on our economic policies. And I keep saying it, Nigeria is very good in making excellent economic policies. Implementation, I'm sorry to use it very bluntly on television, has always been zero. That's why all these things are happening.
Do we really think through our economic policies as part of the
we
policy
think
makers?
through
in making the policy. But in the execution and implementation of the policy, we just go to sleep.
What would you say about closing our borders and signing the CFTA, the Continental Free Trade Area?
Thank you very much, Nancy. The entire, whether you like it or not, you must think Nigeria. Even in CFTA, what do you stand to gain? That is your own selfish question you must ask yourself. First of all, CFTA allows free movement of persons and goods and services so that we can have economic, financial integration of the continent. But what do you gain from it? At the initial stages, of course, CBN stood up and said, no, we oppose it, not because we don't like it, but because we believe Nigeria is not prepared for it. Eventually, we held a number of consultations, and we agreed with Nigeria should go into it, but let us prepare ourselves. Nancy, preparing yourself means that your industries must be back to life. If your industry, I was reading in the newspaper one day, one of the car companies, I don't want to mention names, said they were going to another neighboring country to establish their plant. A country that has a population of less than Lagos State. Whereas they abandoned Nigeria that has 200 million people. Nigeria is the market for Africa. So that is the reason we have to go through certain unorthodox means to make sure that we get our industries back alive. They create jobs. As they create jobs, the industrial output is boosted, demand is boosted, and growth can return to the level that we were seeing it up to around late 2013. If we don't do so, and we say we want to go into ESCFTA because we are just a member of the African Union, we'll go so, and we'll be sorry for what will happen to our country.
Shouldn't it also transcend beyond just being the biggest population or the largest population on the continent and just having the largest market by population size? With the CFTA, what it means is that businesses and industries will be looking at a market of over 1 billion people and perhaps a $3 trillion economy. This path that Nigeria is taking, are we on the right path?
I have just told you.
Nigeria is in AFCFTA. The Nigeria needs to prepare to take advantage.
Are we preparing?
That
is
is
this
exactly,
part of the preparation?
For me, this should be part of the preparation to get your industries back alive.
Otherwise, if they are not back alive in Nigeria, it means those industries will go to other countries, develop there, and then they will ship their goods into Nigeria to our own detriment.
What would you say to your critics that say in different fora, or that sometimes have even told me that the central bank is doing a lot of things, that Emefiele has his hand in a lot of things? Will you solve all Nigerians' issues?
Let me tell you this.
I want to thank them for criticizing, for their critique, but you know, this business we are in is not a popularity contest, right? But I am telling myself, I say, God put me in this position to contribute to my quota. Don't forget, and please, without being seen to be putting on airs, before I became governor of Central Bank, I was the MD of a bank for 4 years. I thank God for what He has used me for. But I'm saying that being here, and I see things that are wrong, things that should come, and that by my instrumentality, I could influence policy that will correct them for the good of my country, to the extent that jobs are created, right? To the extent that industries come alive, to the extent that not just that jobs are created, that the incidence of insecurity resulting from whether I call it Boko Haram, whether I call it kidnapping, or whether you call it all sorts of social vices in the country, to the extent that this will reduce as a result of my participation in ensuring that these policies are efficacious, I will do it.
Let's move to another issue. The NBS just released their inflation numbers, 11.6% in October. We've seen that's a rise, at least for September it was 11.24%. And the next MPC meeting, in fact the last for the year, will soon, is just a few days away. How would you juxtapose your fight against inflation, which is your primary mandate to fight inflation, as well as, growing the economy, and with what's happening now? Which one is the lesser evil for you to chase?
Well, I would say my priority remains price and monetary stability, which is the same thing as you put it, fighting inflation and trying to ensure that prices are moderated to a level where it makes life better for our people. But we must fight inflation and go for the price and monetary stability, but that must be conducive to growth to the extent that it creates jobs, to the extent that the industries are back to life. There may appear to be some conflicting objectives, but the important thing is that is why we must think outside the box and begin to think about what are some of the unconventional ways that can be used not only to achieve price stability, but achieve price stability that is conducive to growth, that will create jobs, get industries back to life again, and then we'll reduce the level of insecurity in our country.
Would you say that because you use interest rates to fight inflation and all of that, would you say you've been successful so far? Because your target is single digit, between 6 and 9%. I don't want to ask when are we going to get there.
Yeah, honestly,
of course, that mandate still remains in place. And if you imagine that for 25 or 26 consecutive months, from January 2017 up till even this September we're talking about, we saw inflation dropping persistently from 18.72 in January 2017 to 11.2 in September 2019. Yes, I'm not going to disagree with people who say that inflation ticked up from 11.2 to 11.6 on the back of the border closures. But I'm saying there are a lot of benefits in the border closure. Yeah, there has been, I use the word, there will naturally be a temporary increase in price arising from the supply shortage. And that as more people go into this, and in fact, I can see that as long as there are actions that have been taken, and that is being taken, not by government, by central bank, by everybody, to boost supply, within a short run, the lag, maybe another 3 months or 4 months, you will find out that inflation will begin to trend downwards again.
So we're looking at perhaps 2020 for inflation to trend down because it's almost the end of the year.
It will trend down, yes.
So when do we see interest rate trending down? Because 13.5%
interest rates are already trending
down. Let me put it this way. You will say that yes, monetary policy rate has remained at 4. Is it 13.5? Persistently. From 14 to 13.5, I would say, using those two numbers, I would say in the last almost 2.5 to 3 years. But you will also observe that in the last 3 to 4 months, interest rates, that is borrowing rates by borrowers or lending rates by banks, have started to drop. They have dropped by as high as 300 to 400 basis points. And it is because of certain actions that have been taken by the Central Bank of Nigeria. 2, imposing a loan deposit ratio on the banks. And 2, asking those that have no business being in the open market operation, open market of the CBN, to get out of that market, has provided a lot of liquidity to this extent that we are seeing banks lending money, in fact, chasing people, not even approaching, chasing companies and chasing individuals to come and access loan at lower rates. And that's why I'm telling you that even without altering policy rate, interest rates are coming down because of certain actions that we took, which also meant that there were certain structural inefficiencies in our interest rate structure, which we are addressing, and that is now contributing in the reduction of interest rates. The equities market, like you may have known, is back to life. We are saying you don't have to put all your monies in securities and the money market. Go to the capital market. Put your money in infrastructure if you have it. In fact, if you if you think you want to save your money and the deposit rate the bank is offering you is too low, then take the money, go and buy cassava processing machine and begin to process cassava that can be sold. Or go and put the money to do your farming in Ankobura, do your own Ankobura program and produce rice where you can sell, or produce cassava, or produce tomato which you can sell, rather than saving the money. That's what we prefer at this time. We need to create activity in the Nigerian economy.
Now that brings me to the question of, because I think there was this misconception when the policy came out, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, that the central bank has discouraged individuals from buying treasury bills and all of that. Expatiate on that, because
Very
that was,
correct.
yes.
Very correct. What are we saying?
If you have money, you have a responsibility. If for instance, you earn a salary and you have surplus, you can save it. You save it in a bank, or if you choose, go and buy treasury bills. But the OMO, Open Market Operation Instruments of the central bank, is central bank's instrument for controlling money supply. And the only two people or two important groups that are allowed there are banks and foreign portfolio investors. Any other person who has been operating there was doing so without central bank, I use the word, I would say not being conscious of the activity. Because we recently found out that these people are there and they were there in large numbers, we had to expel them from that window to go to other places. And that is what is actually helping the situation right now.
Do you think that your monetary policy tools are still working? As in the essence of controlling it, which is the anchor rate?
Listen.
There are various instruments of monetary policy that is used to control price or to achieve our objective of price and monetary stability. Policy rate is one, right? The policy rate is one, right? The OMO is another, treasury bills is another, the CRR is another, and there are various instruments. So, and I would say almost all of them are working very well. If one is not as efficacious as the other, it does not mean that instruments of monetary policy are not working.
How do you think that the minimum wage increase will affect or impact inflation? Because we cannot run away from that. 30,000 naira minimum wage, if you still look at it in many climes, even in Africa, it's still very low. An average worker, 30,000 naira a month would amount to 360,000 naira a year, which is about $1,000 US, with 360 to dollar exchange rate.
I am not going to
sit before camera and tell you that it will not, that increase in minimum wage will not have inflationary consequences, but the rate of that impact on inflation is what we are waiting to see. If and let me put it this way, what we said is that the minimum salary that somebody earns for going to work should be 30,000. It does not mean that by adjusting somebody from, say, is it 18 or 18,000 now to 30, that every other person that currently earns above 30 gets automatically adjusted. There are certain adjustment mechanisms that makes the impact of those who are currently earning above 30,000, right? That the impact, their own increase is not as high as the increase from 18 to 30,000. So that's what we're trying to see. We want to watch and see. From looking at it on a straight line basis, you will say, yes, it will have inflationary consequences. But the degree of that inflationary consequence is what we're still waiting to see. But I'm not sure that it will be that dire, particularly in a situation where you are also saying people should produce, that we should produce to boost supply so as to also moderate prices.
Let's go to the banks. The banks, they've really been in Nigeria this kind of, I don't want to say naughty, but I've said naughty actually. A lot of Nigerians are not happy and are frustrated right now with what the banks are doing. For me, I get alerts of different charges on my phone. A lot of people will say, why charge me for an ATM card maintenance that is in my wallet? What are you maintaining? See different charges, different charges. Then even the latest, on every POS transaction, I saw your policy also on POS transaction above 1,000 naira. In fact, a colleague of mine was telling me, was it today, that he did a transaction of 500 naira using the POS, but was charged 50 naira. I was also charged 50 naira. In fact, when they brought the POS, like 1,050 naira. I said, for what? He said, for using the POS. But you want to encourage cashless policy. What's all of that? So those are two questions.
Nancy, first, I don't want you to think I'm trying to defend the banks. Banks incur certain expenses that should be paid for one way or the other, right? The POS machine, that is the gadget being used, costs some money. The ATM machine that is being used costs some money. The infrastructure that will even make the POS and ATM to work, whether it is power, whether it is diesel, right? All of them, they cost money. One way or the other, they have to be paid for. What I would admit is that there may be cases of incessant charges, and we have told our Consumer Protection Department to have their eyes on the ball. Once we receive those kind of complaints, we'll make sure the banks reverse those charges. Now, when you go to issue of, you are paying 50 naira on 1,000 naira item and all that, that is payment for stamp duty. And we have, you see, government, that money it goes to government. It's part of revenue, raising revenue to fund the operations of government. And what I ask people is this: if government, like a father, needs to fend for the people, build roads, hospitals, or schools, as the case may be, government needs money to fund that. Funding it means either it raises revenue, either through taxes, because your 50 naira is a tax, stamp duty tax, or they take a loan. So government must fund this obligation one way or the other.
So does that mean that Nigerians should overpay? Should we now overpay a lot of charges? And I'm sure that, Governor, you too will be getting such charges from banks.
Well, the point is this.
I am saying it is regrettable, but at least government must raise revenue. Okay, the issue is this: government goes to borrow. You say, even you, Nancy, I'm sure you would have said government is over borrowing. Even though Nigeria's debt to GDP is amongst the lowest in the world at about 2021.
But that's not the issue. The issue is debt to revenue
That's
and debt to cost.
So